I want you to think about the last time you watched the IT crowd. You laughed at the basement. You laughed at the calls. You laughed at Moss explaining the internet. You laughed at Roy's 1,000-yard stare. You laughed at Jen pretending to understand anything that was happening around her. And then you went back to work, to your basement, to your reactive queue, to your team that the rest of the business doesn't understand, doesn't consult, and only calls when something breaks. To your service desk that runs on heroics and institutional knowledge and sheer stubborn will, and somehow, most days, keeps the lights on. The show wasn't that fictional, and that's what you should be embarrassed about. Not because your shop is a disaster, because you recognized it and laughed and didn't change anything. Let me walk you through the 5 ways your MSP is currently living in that basement. Not as an insult, as a diagnostic. The first step out of the basement is admitting you're in it. 1. You're reactive by default. Moss and Roy didn't plan their day. Their day happened to them. The phone rang, the tickets appeared, the fire started, and they ran toward it. That's not a service model. That's a permanent emergency response posture with a monthly invoice attached. If your team wakes up every morning not knowing what the day looks like until the queue fills up, you're in the basement. The lights are on, the equipment is good, and you're waiting for the building to catch fire so you have something to do. Reactive isn't a phase. For most MSPs, it's a culture, and cultures don't fix themselves by accident. 2. It is isolated from the business. In the show, the basement isn't just a physical location. It's a relationship. IT exists as a separate universe from the rest of Reynholm Industries. They don't have a seat at any table. They don't shape decisions. They receive decisions, usually after the damage is done, and are expected to make them work. Sound familiar? How many times have your team found out about a new system, a new client, a new initiative, or a new compliance requirement after the contract was already signed? How many times have you been the last person in the room and the first person expected to fix it? That's not a technology problem, that's a positioning problem. And it starts at the top. 3. You speak a language nobody else understands. Moss explains the internet to a room full of executives in one of the funniest scenes in the show. It's also one of the most accurate. Technical brilliance that can't be communicated in business terms isn't an asset to the organization. It's a liability. It becomes the reason leadership stops consulting you, the reason clients stop trusting you, the reason QBRs feel like a hostage negotiation where both sides are confused. If your team can't explain what they do, why it matters, and what it costs the business when it's not done, in plain language, in under 2 minutes, you have a communications problem that no amount of technical excellence will solve. 4. Your processes live in people's heads, not in documentation. The IT crowd ran entirely on tribal knowledge. Moss knew things. Roy knew things. Nobody wrote anything down because the people who needed to know already knew. And the day either of them left, the whole operation would have collapsed into a very expensive pile of confusion. How many of your technical processes, client onboarding, escalation path, ticket handling, backup verification, security protocols, live in someone else's head right now? How many of those heads belong to people who could be gone in 2 weeks with a standard resignation letter? You don't have a process problem. You have a documentation debt that's been accumulating interest since the day you hired your first technician. 5. Perpetually misunderstood by the business you serve. The most tragic element of the IT crowd isn't the chaos, it's the invisibility. Moss and Roy are genuinely brilliant. They keep the whole operation running, and absolutely nobody upstairs appreciates, understands, or advocates what they do until something breaks. Then suddenly everyone has an opinion. If the only time your client thinks about you is when something goes wrong, you haven't built a strategic partnership. You built a utility, and utilities get priced like utilities. As low as possible, switched the moment something cheaper comes along, with zero loyalty and zero recognition of the value underneath. Here's what I want to be clear about before we go any further. The IT crowd is funny because Moss and Roy are good people in a broken system, not broken people in a working system. The problem was never the technicians. The problem was the structure or the complete absence of one. The lack of vision for what IT could be. The absence of anyone in leadership who understood the value of what was sitting in the basement and had the will to build something worth building around it. The same is true for your MSP. If your shop looks like the basement, the technicians aren't the problem. The absence of a system is the problem. The absence of a deliberate service model is the problem. The absence of positioning, knowing who you are, what you deliver, and why it matters is the problem. The Business Maturity Index, or the BMI as I call it, maps this exactly. A level 2 shop, reactive, has people who are working hard and solving real problems. The issue isn't effort. It's that effort isn't organized into anything that compounds. Every day starts over. Every win is local. Every process depends on whoever was there when the problem last happened. That's the basement. And the exit isn't through the ceiling. It's through a deliberate structural decision to build something different. The embarrassment I'm pointing to isn't failure. It's recognition without action. You watched the show, you laughed in recognition, you went back to the basement. That's the part worth changing. 4 moves. Concrete, no consultant jargon. These are the things that separate MSPs that got out of the basement from the ones still waiting for the elevator to show up. Move 1. Position it as a business function, not a break-fix service. Moss and Roy were order takers. Phone rings, ticket appears, they respond. If that's your model, and for most MSPs it still is at some level, you're pricing yourself as a cost center. Cost centers get cut. Strategic partners get consulted. The difference between the two isn't technical capability, it's how you show up before anything breaks. This means proactive communications, regular business reviews that talk about business outcomes, not just uptime percentages. A seat at the table when decisions are being made that will eventually land on your service desk. You don't get involved in that table by being good at tickets. You get involved by demonstrating that your work has a direct line to their ability to operate and grow. Move 2. Build a process that runs without you in the room. Jen, God bless her, had no idea what was happening in the basement and didn't particularly want to. The problem is that most MSP owners are also playing Jen to their own operation. The work gets done, the clients are mostly happy, and you have only a vague idea of what actually happened between ticket open and ticket closed. The IT Service Run Guide is the structural answer to this. It's the documented, deployed, accountability-driven operation model for a service desk that doesn't require heroics to function. Ticket prioritization, status frameworks, escalation protocols, communication standards. When the process is written down and enforced, the new text can be productive faster. Clients get consistent experience, and you stop losing institutional knowledge every time someone hands in their resignation. Move 3. Learn to speak business, not just technology. The single most valuable skill an MSP owner can develop, and almost none of them prioritize it, is the ability to translate technical value into business language. Not dumb it down, translate it up. Your clients don't care about backup retention policies. They care about whether they can survive a ransomware attack. They don't care about network segmentation. They care about whether a breach in one system takes down their whole operation. When you learn to lead with business consequences instead of technical solution, you stop sounding like Moss explaining the internet, and you start sounding like someone they should be paying a lot more attention to. Move 4. Get out of your cave. The basement in the IT crowd was also a metaphor for isolation. Moss and Roy weren't just physically separated from the business, they were intellectually and professionally isolated. No peer group, no outside perspective, no one to tell them that what they were tolerating wasn't normal or necessary. Most MSP owners are running the same play, working 70 hours a week, solving the same problems other MSP owners solved 3 years ago. Reinventing wheels that already exist, documented, proven, and freely shared, if you just step outside your own operation long enough to find them. Masterminds, peer groups, coaching. The MSPs that are growing past the basement aren't smarter than the ones who are stuck. They're just less isolated. That's the whole difference. The IT crowd is one of the greatest workplace comedies ever made. Moss and Roy are iconic. The writer is brilliant. And if you've worked in IT, it's deeply uncomfortably, specifically accurate. That's the point. The show didn't create your basement. It just described it so accurately that you laughed instead of wincing. The embarrassment I'm pointing to isn't that your shop has problems. Every shop has problems. The embarrassment is watching something describe exactly where you are and then going back to exactly where you are. You don't have to stay in the basement. The ceiling isn't that high, the door isn't that heavy. You do have to decide to walk out. Nobody's coming down to carry you. If you want to know exactly where your operation sits, reactive, stabilizing, or something worth building on, the Business Maturity Index is in the description. Take it, be honest, then do something with what it tells you.